Miles Horton has a very, and I did get to that part and it was great. He is a very, like, he moves from these ideas of there's just people in abject poverty. He grew up in poverty and seeing people from his community in poverty, and then moving from, I'm just teaching them how to read and math, basic math, so that they can support themselves better, to realizing that it's up to them, but we're also educating them so that they can be, in this sense, community self-sufficient, not just self-sufficient, right? And that's basically where the Highlander School went. That's where we get into these social movements, where we get into labor unions and the civil rights movement. And this is something that I think we do a lot, and I think in particularly in America, because I can't talk about the world, but is that we focus on individual achievement. And we focus on the individual, but we're not thinking about the bigger picture, right? Like we always talk about Rosa Parks as the pioneer, but no, this was a plan. This was a community plan that a bunch of people did. She was the one that was centered, but and that was intentional.
She was chosen, and she chose herself. I mean, this is part of a long range plan. Exactly,
it's a long range plan, and it's community led. It's very important that the community learns and then works together. Absolutely. And I think that's what we do in adult ed without really thinking about that in that sense, because we think of like, and I think you're right about the language of WIOA is it kind of sticks to like more economical, or like that person is supporting their family and then maybe getting off benefits, right?
Totally,
this stuff. But it's also, we're working with communities. These people are going back. It's not like they're just going back to their home and only interacting with their family. They're going back to community. And that's something that we should really stick to. And I would argue that a little bit of that is not just sort of American thinking, but also Malcolm Knowles focused on individual. He used all these tenets of and what you said, student-centered learning, right? They were doing that 100 years ago before we had that language, right?
Absolutely.
But and then
John Dewey was doing that. Yeah,
exactly. That was more than that. John Dewey, like 1900s, right? But we didn't have that language. And when Malcolm Knowles was cementing these tenets of adult learning theory, right? He was taking a lot of this history and putting it together because he knew all this stuff. He's written stuff about it.
Yeah.
But the issue is he didn't tie it back to community. He tied it back to the individual.
Right.
And I think that's where we are now.
So like, American.
I think that's kind of what we get wrapped up in adult ed, even though we see difference when we make it. Not just an individual, we see the difference in communities and what works. It's just
a really good point. Yeah. There's another book I'll recommend to you. It's called Bowling Alone. Have you ever heard of that book?
No.
I forgot the guy's last name, Robert something, but you'll find it. It's a famous old book, but it talks about this trend in American society away from collective action and, even in collective social action, like the Kiwanis Club and bowling leagues and things of that nature, church social events, into more of an individualistic society. And then the impacts that has had on people's health and and wellness and the wellness of communities. That's an influential book as well. It's very good, but it's old now, but it's very good. But that's a good point. I hadn't really thought about that, Malcolm Knowles, but I think that you're right. There is an individualistic element of that, and I think that's part of our culture. But I think that the roots of adult education in the United States is highly collectivist. Going back, like my dissertation research is on apprenticeship, so I think about apprenticeship a lot. But that's a really good example of adult education, student learner-centered, worker-centered adult education in action with collectivist, community uplifting goals, right? Family sustaining goals. And not that there's anything wrong with our focus now on making sure people get into high quality jobs and be able to support their families. But I think you're right that it's this, we're not connecting it as often as we should be to the ways that it uplifts our communities in New Mexico, and the way all of that is, that the value of adult education is so much more than just that person's wages, I think. And that's one argument, like, now that I'm in this position where I feel like I want to advocate for, funding for adult education, or I want to speak up for it. And I want to make sure that everyone understands the value of adult education. I think we need to understand that when a community is educated, when people have their high school degrees or their equivalencies and go on to higher education, and when they feel that they can get jobs to support their families, the whole community does better. People vote more, people are healthier, there's less recidivism. There's a lot of research that ties education to these societal benefits that benefit all of us, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Oh man, I love this stuff. I feel like I could talk about it for like an hour.
Yeah, me too.
But yeah, so thank you for that. Oh, it's so interesting. And I definitely am going to check out this book, because this Miles Horton book is excellent. It's so, he writes in just such a, frank, to the point that I really appreciate, because that was the kind of person he was. And I really like that. And I've been doing all this reading as a big part of it is self-education, but also because I'm working on some professional development stuff, and I'm looking for some just stuff to work on. And I'm reading this, and I'm like skimming Pedagogy of the Oppressed at the same time. Yeah. So Freire is like, he's great, but he's also very at times academic. And then you read Miles Horton, it's so different.
Down to earth. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Even though they talk about the same thing, they grew up in completely different places, different work. Like Horton is in rural Appalachia, and Freire was working in the biggest slum in Brazil. And so different. But then it really ties back to adult literacy and community. Yeah. And that's like what they have in common. And it's just so interesting.
Totally.
Because that means there's probably so many global figures that we have no idea about that's been doing all this stuff too.
There are, and I would love to have the time to dig into that more. And there's people now, right, that are doing amazing things. Malala, for example, doing really amazing things with, community organizing and adult learning and things like that. But I wish I had more time to learn about it. But
yeah,
these are my inspirations now.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Just to move along, are there any projects that you're really like interested in and want to talk about a little bit, or just share?
Well, I'm new in my role. So, to be completely honest, a lot of this first year has just been trying to learn the ropes. On all angles of it, and trying to make sure I know what the job is, and that I'm holding down the fort in all the different places that I have to, which often involve just things like making sure contracts are going forward and making sure money is spent in allowable ways and things like that. So I think that's just been a big lift. But I think now some things that we have been doing that I think have been really exciting. Number one, I think, we are continuing all of the excellent work that's has been done and is being done on professional development for adult educators and adult education practitioners in New Mexico. That's really exciting. We're trying to systematize it more, to build more of a system. We have an online portal that we are using and are going to continue to build out as a centralized location for whether they be face-to-face, hybrid, or completely online offerings and communities of practice. That being kind of like the hub, the contact place, and I'm a centralized contact place for that. And I'm really excited about all of those different parts. All year, different work groups got together and of practitioners in the field, and they came up with recommendations for us about things that they would like to see in a professional development system. And so I'm really excited. I've been reading those. We've been thinking about how those will fit into the system. We've been thinking about, okay, how do we structure the system going forward, and the really limited amount of funds that we have just to start this, and then see how can we even maybe get other funding to support this. So I was talking to Tina Height, our professional development coordinator, the other day, and we both expressed this desire that that the professional development system for adult educators in New Mexico become a model for the rest of the country, that we say here's this relatively small state, small in number of people and in resources, adult education resources, but big in heart, big in geography as well. How do we put together something really high quality that supports our adult educators. And, I really identify as a practitioner myself. Like, I really feel like that's one thing I want to tell people in adult education in New Mexico is that I identify as a practitioner. I am a practitioner. And I remember my entire career I have been, and I remember talking about this, many years ago with other adult educators, just talking about, how adult education in general and adult education practitioners, sometimes don't have, that there's a lot of stigma about adult education, that we don't have a lot of status, that it's hard to get paid well. It's hard to make a living doing this work. And we've always lamented that and lamented the, kind of the deprofessionalization of the field as a result. And I think that it's really exciting to be part of an effort that is trying to fight back against that and to lift us up as a field. And that's what gets me excited about building a professional development system. It's really about this lifting us all up and lifting our work up and showing it the value that it needs. And then, of course, by extension, providing students with really high quality services across the state, whether you attend a really tiny program or a large program, that you still would be able to get this high quality service and that people are supported to be able to provide that, both financially, but also in terms of the knowledge, right? The education. I think so. That's one thing that's probably the thing I think about the most right now and that I'm most excited about. But I'm also really excited about just providing more support in general. I guess this is part of PD, but I get we have a really small staff, in the state office. Everybody works really hard, and we get a lot of questions all of the time. People have so many needs, and I can see a need to just continue to build out supports and policies and having things in place and resources and tools for people to access. And I think just, something as simple as building the propelnm.org website is something I think that we should all be proud of, because it gives a centralized place for people to get a lot of those resources so that people have something to depend upon and get the kind of just-in-time support that they need. So I think those are two things that excite me. I think the third thing is just continuing to raise awareness about adult education and advocating for adult education in New Mexico. I think a lot of people, as nobody listening to this podcast is going to be surprised by this, but a lot of people don't know we exist, right? They don't understand what we do. They may think that we do just a small fraction of what we actually do accomplish. And they may not understand just how much we do with the really small amount of funding that we have to work with. And that I worry sometimes about almost like a hero mentality that we have in adult education. There are so many well-meaning, intelligent, hardworking people that are basically donating their time. And that's great if people want to be volunteers, but we really need to find ways to sort of build the system up so we can pay people appropriately. We can give them full-time jobs instead of part-time positions if they would like them. And that we're able to, all this investment that we're doing in PD for people, that it means something because people stick around because they feel valued and are able to support their families doing this work. So that's like the work of a lifetime, right? Like that's not something we'll accomplish anytime soon, but I think every year we can take steps towards that. And so that's something that I consider to be a permanent project of mine for the time that I'm here.
Excellent. Thank you. It's just so much great stuff. I really appreciate your time. And also when you were talking about the PD system and just, have it being a support and being more of a support, which I feel like since I moved to New Mexico, I've been experiencing so much. I've never been more involved in the field. Awesome. Yeah. In New York, I taught in a library system. It was a part-time job, and I had other work to support myself. So it would just be like I'm on my own island. So I didn't know anything about any of this stuff. And in New Mexico, I feel like I came in the right time where it was COVID and things were crazy. And I mean, we're still in it. It's not like we're just better handling it.
Yeah. We're learning to live with it in a way.
We're learning to live with it. Yes. Like the flu and the common cold. We've learned that it's not a death sentence to go outside anymore. But my point is that we're getting these kind of structures now where we're able to communicate outside of yearly conferences. Yeah. If you're able to go to a conference, and not just like across the state, but nationwide. So I think there is this opportunity now that adult ed practitioners can learn from each other, and now's the time to build these structures so we can legitimize the field and build the field, not legitimize, professionalize the term.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah.
Right, professionalize the field. So I just wanted to say thank you so much for your time.
Oh yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Is there anything else that you want people to know about you before we sign off?
No, I think I said that bit about me being a practitioner, which I feel is sort of important to the way I approach things. I think maybe also, I guess I would just want to say that, like I mentioned, a lot of I worked as a consultant for a long, long time. And part of that work as a consultant has been, working on state grants and federal grants, like, as a consultant on those things. And I've always really reacted against sometimes the way that like bureaucrats interact with the practitioners, sometimes one's federal handlers, it can feel pretty cold and distant and, exacting and, intimidating, for lack of a better word. And I guess I just would like to say that, I hope that, we're a small state and everything, so I hope I don't come off that way. But I guess I really hope I don't come off that way. I want to be down to earth. I want to be approachable. I want people to understand that I'm a practitioner that would really like to speak with them about their practice and learn from that, and then see what I can do in my role, which is, it's fantastic, but it's also limited in its own ways. But what can I do holding, certain AFLA purse strings and getting to make decisions, having the honor to make decisions about where we can put certain limited funds? What can I learn from everyone to do that better and to support people better? So I guess I want people to please feel free to email me, to reach out, to call, whatever, and know that I don't want to be separate from the field, and I don't feel that I'm separate from the field.
Thank you so much. And just to add to the listeners, Amber and I met before she was the state director. Yeah. Met on the phone. I was looking for instructional designers that worked in the nonprofit field, and nonprofit people are hard to find. Especially instructional design nonprofit people. So I bought this COAB journal, trying to figure out how I can get adult ed, instructional design, and kind of make a role for myself somewhere. And I read your article, and I'm sorry that the title is losing me right now.
I think it was the role of adult educators in apprenticeship or something.
Yeah. And I loved that article. I was so excited about it. So I found Amber on LinkedIn and just messaged her and just asked for a few minutes of her time. And we had this half-hour phone call or so about adult education and how we can do instructional design with, working outside of a corporate space. And it's just so funny to see a year later, I'm moving to New Mexico.
It's really strange. I'm so glad you're here. Next time I heard about you, you'd shown up in New Mexico. So it's great.
Yeah, that was funny. But yeah, so that just speaks, that, little anecdote just speaks to your approachability. And I just feel like that you are approachable. I've been ignored by people in much lower positions than you. So I am so honored.
As I've also been ignored many times.
Yeah, so I really appreciate it. So this is just us signing off. Please like and subscribe in the Maya podcast. Amber, thank you again so much for your time. It's been a great conversation.
Yeah, thank you for doing this. It was fun. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.